Bengals heading to NOLA this weekend. We're going to talk about it coming up next on the Cincinnati podcast.
Yes. Hello, world. We got a special show as always. TJ Houshmandzada, Jimmy Chase, Coach Jimmy Burrow.
How do you balance being a professional athlete and family obligation?
These are top 5 Bengals of all time.
All time?
Yeah. Shock the world.
Welcome to the Cincinnati podcast. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim. Zim, say what's up.
What's up? Hello, world. How we doing this evening? We're back. Better than ever.
It's a who dat versus who they week, right? This is
who dat versus who they
thing. I feel like we've been talking about everything, both sides, except who came up with the phrase first. But it's gonna be interesting to be at that game and hear who dat versus who they. Like that's gonna be kind of a dope kind of experience. What you think?
My interactions, I will tell you this. Fans that actually go to games versus internet fans are very different. Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of Saints people say, y'all keep on saying like this is Joe Burrow homecoming. It ain't gonna be friendly out there. I hope y'all know, like they don't, like I've heard that a lot. I've also heard them say like, why does everybody want to have a parade and all this stuff? Like the New Orleans people that are on the internet, I don't know if this is real life, but they aren't really as inviting of Joe Burrow and like Hill Collins and Jamar Chase reunion as much as I think the Bengals fans have been like kind of like speaking that up.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, bro? Like you said, it might not be like that. I do know Saints are diehard fans. The times that I've been to New Orleans, I don't even think it was football season. They were still repping the Saints. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is something like that. I'm sure they got love for Joe and everything, right? But I think at the end of the day, just like us, if it were to be someone coming back and playing the Bengals like an Andy Dalton with some of our fan base, yeah, they're going to be cordial towards Andy Dalton, but they don't want him to win, right? They're not going to cheer for Andy Dalton to throw a touchdown against their team. But, I think it definitely could have some different dynamics to it.
I do think it's one of those rare occurrences in, like, football where you got somebody where, say Joe Burrow does a really good play. There's going to be a LSU fan or something like that that has on a Saints jersey that might be like, all right, Joe. Like that was a good one, you know what I mean? I think it's a rare occurrence in football. Like there's just too many people in the state of Louisiana that like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and you could love, the Saints all you want. Like you're still like, like think about when Ohio State players come and they play and they have successful games against the Bengals. I know firsthand that those Ohio State fans like really, really still like show a lot of love to, like their former players. So. I don't know, man. I think it's gonna be a dope thing, and when the Bengals win,
right?
When the Bengals win, I think that people are gonna be able to give me some high fives, and we all gonna party, and we're gonna go down Bourbon Street, and it's gonna be lit.
So our man Diddy says, which member of the pod is gonna eat the most? And Nola, I'm sorry, it's gonna be me, bro. I'm already eating the most before we even get to Nola. It's probably gonna be me. I know Zim been making some room though, jumping on that treadmill. I haven't jumped on a treadmill in a while, so I would say it might be me, man. That gumbo, that Cajun rice, those po' boys. I don't know, but Zim might be. I don't know. What you think, Zim? You gonna do the most, or is it gonna be me?
Normally, I would say it would be me, but something with sports, I will tell you this. Something with sports is the one time I really don't care about food that much. Like when the actual game is going on or around it, I don't know if it's nerves or something like that. I really am like, let me see where the food is at, whether it's a win. And if we lose, then I'm not hungry at all. If I win, I'm not like, let me.
Yeah, that's going to mess
Now you on Saturday. Maybe, you with the fam, you know what I'm saying? Like me, I think you might have me beat for the first time on this one because I don't plan on going to like too many like eatings. I'm trying to make sure I'm 100% ready to rock and roll on Sunday.
For sure. Well, we got a lot coming up on today's show. We're obviously going to talk about Joe Burrow's homecoming, and not just his homecoming. It's a homecoming for a lot of guys there with Saints ties. And New Orleans ties, including, of course, Jamar Chase and a lot of LSU Bengals that are on the team and former Saints. We're also going to preview the Bengals versus Saints, and then we're going to talk about Andy Dalton now being a nemesis, which he's technically been a nemesis for the last 3 years, but we'll talk about that coming up next. All right, bro, let's get in some of the comments that the Tiger is ready to get out of the cage. Let's get into some of the comments that Joe Burrow had. You kind of talked about it a little bit on Twitter Spaces, but one of the things that I want to talk about is Joe Burrow's comments on the Volume podcast, right? He has some things to say. Some people are calling it a rally cry. I know you love this one because you lead the Harry Nuts gang. Joe said we're going to go down there and fight our balls off for a win. What do you think of those thoughts or those comments? What are your thoughts on those comments with Joe making that statement?
I feel like that's I move with Joe, on a weekly basis. He gives me confidence. Whether Joe Burrow knows I exist or not, I'm not sure. But he gives me confidence on an everyday basis. So sometimes when he gives messages like that, like I just lead by it, man. He said, be calm, be relaxed at that week. What was that, 2 weeks ago at the podium? I instantly was like, all right, bet, we got it then. You know what I'm saying? So moving forward, he like, bro, we got to fight our balls off. I just think that the fans, got to kind of, be like, what sense would it do at this point to complain about all these different things? Because literally there's a game coming up Sunday. So you could complain all you want, but you better be ready to go fight your balls off this Sunday if you want a dub. And that's how I'm rocking. Like, it's going to be a win this week. And that's how I'm feeling moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's just his translation of this is possibly like a must win. This is do or die. We got to go down there with that attitude. We got to come out aggressive. And I think that they will, especially with them knowing the moment, realizing what's going on, the gravity of the situation of the game. And so for me, like, he's really describing it perfectly. They're going to have to go down, fight their tails off, fight their balls off, whatever they got to do to try to get out a W. And I think, that's the right mindset to have. He's the leader. He's the head of the body. So I think that is going to play a huge factor. Let's talk about injuries. We just said last week we don't really talk about injuries. Injuries might play a point in this game because Jonah Williams and T. Higgins didn't practice. That's big, right? Because when I look at it from a standpoint, those are some of the weak positions on our team in terms of depth, right? Like, yes, we could talk about the Migos, right? But we've seen, and not only the Steelers game, in the last game, the need for another outside receiver really has become one of the weaknesses, right? You take T. Higgins out of the game, you see what happens last week, you see what happens against the Steelers. It slows it down. It allows teams to really blanket Jamar Chase and focus in on him. That's something that I'm going to pay attention to. I'm not sure if he's going to go, though, for this weekend. It's the high ankle sprain. And then you talk about Jonah Williams, right? We saw him get the knee sprain in the game, in the last game. And obviously that's another position where there's a huge drop off, just like it is from T. Higgins to Mike Thomas. There's that same kind of drop off, right? As much as I've criticized Jonah and been critical of him, I can sit here and tell you he is like 3 or 4 times better than his replacement, right? That's not to take a shot. It's just the reality of the situation. That is something I think that we have to monitor and look at. However, I do think the next man up will be Hakeem Adeniji. We'll have to see what he can do. I did see at some points he did struggle in the last game. Got away with a hold on one of the plays that I saw.
How many series was he in though? Was it like one series,
bro? I think it was like right before the half, if my memory serves me.
I just remember him being out like only 1 or 2 series.
See, I know you were at the game, but if you were at home, they did a replay and they zoomed in and he was like obviously holding the dude. They didn't call it, right. But he was like holding the dude to keep him from getting to the quarterback, which I'd rather my tackle hold instead of letting Joe Burrow get hit, right?
Right.
But it did seem like, man, I don't know how this is going to go with him on Owe. And you talk about a guy over on the Saints that can really tear this game up. You talk about Cam Jordan. You got to hope that Cam Jordan isn't on that side. So it's something to monitor, but it's something that we're going to have to deal with. But I think that those 2 injuries could have a huge impact on this game. What are your thoughts on the injury report? What's the significance of it from your aspect?
I think the injuries, in every single, game, you always got to talk about them before the game. One of my main things is you got to make sure that you're looking at the scouting report, knowing exactly who are you playing, all these different things. I will say this though, just looking at some stuff, I wanted to go into like as far as like sacks in the NFL. The Saints have 10. They only have one interception. Their third down efficiency has been really bad. Time of possession has been really, middle of the pack. Their yards per game is pretty good. I had some DVOA stats for their defense as well. And the pass rush recently hasn't been getting home as it
hasn't been. You're right. Yeah.
It hasn't been. And I think it was 26 ranked. I want to make sure before I get that on video, but I think it was 26 ranked. I'm going to pull it back up as far as like their pass rush win rates in the NFL this season. So it might not be the challenge that we think. I think Jonah played one of his better games the week prior, and I think he's been progressively getting better throughout the season. I thought Kappa balled out really. I thought that was Kappa's best game in the Ravens game when I go back and look at it. So there's some bright spots, some guys I really like. I don't think the drop-off is crazy. I would be probably terrified if you had like a TJ Watt level guy on the other side. And that's not to take a shot at Cameron Jordan, but you know what I'm saying? Like he's a fine pass rusher, and I think he can definitely disrupt the game. But I think you can kind of plan for it and scheme for it a little bit better than you can some of the main rushers in the NFL right now. So I just think that we got some guys, some depth pieces that could work. I think that would be not as big as the T. Higgins one to me, because right now the Bengals are struggling to find like their rhythm on offense. We've been all week investigating and looking into why is the Bengals offense not hitting on all cylinders, and a lot of it has been, what it's always been, the too high looks. But we had a breakthrough this past week where the run game started to hit home, and once the run game started going crazy, I'm like, okay, now I got my one-on-one matchups. And literally the difference between the Bengals and a lot of teams is that if they have those one-on-one matchups, they're 85% of the time they're winning them. Whereas you got a lot of these other teams that don't have the weapons that we have. So it's not that simple for them. And I just think that T. Higgins being a number one threat in the league, I just think that people, it's almost like you don't know what you got till it's gone. But Bengals fans know what they got in T. Higgins and why he's been gone. And we've been downplaying it and not speaking up on it enough. I think this is the first week where people are starting to ramp it up a little bit. And, seeing him on the practice field earlier, or on the rehab field, I'm sorry, it looked pretty good and looked good enough to go, but it does worry me. Like we're recording this on October 13th. It does worry. He doesn't look 100% at all. He was running pretty good, and that's the most that we've seen from him. So he was limited in his practice. Right. And that in itself, now going into Friday, for sure, that's not encouraging. And if you're constantly talking about swelling, then the doctors at some point are going to take a look. That they might say, let's get another look at this ankle. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of fearing is like he thought he could go last week, but then it started to swell up on him. And normally, in my mind, and I'm not a football doctor, but generally you swell up, the ankle swells up or something like that. You go through a period where you nurse it down. Remember, we had the full 10 days. Right. So we had 10 days, and then after that, you're good. Nothing's broken. For it to swell up again, to me, is like a red flag.
Yeah, and for sure.
That's the part where I'm like, I've broken my ankle before, and I know how that looks. And I've also sprained my ankle really, really bad, and it generally just gets better. It doesn't really get worse. The time where I broke my ankle is when I thought I just sprained it. And then we went and looked and got the x-ray on it and figured out why wasn't the swelling going down. That was why. So I'm a little bit more like looking at the T. Higgins one. And now on the other side of it, the Saints injury report is like the size of the whole bayou. Like it is super long. It is a long list of guys out. So you got
two big guys, like you said, Lattimore and Michael Thomas. Those two are big guys.
And Landry's on the report. You got
on a side note though, all the Mike Thomases in this game. I know we're talking about injuries. We got Michael Thomas, we got Mike Thomas, and then they got Mike. They got to take a picture.
They got to take a picture.
They got to take a picture.
Hey, bro, they have to do jersey swaps and take a picture, bro. Like, that's crazy.
They
like,
got to. That's crazy.
That would be dope. Like,
but continue.
I'm cutting that video for later, or we putting the clip out now. We need the Mike, all the Mike Thomases. But their injury report, they got a yeah, bro. They got some injuries on their thing. I think it'll take up too much time. But it's a bunch of guys on there. So on their end, they're not 100% healthy, and that's where I'm not even gonna call it a pessimistic Bengals fan. That's where the Bengals fan that's understanding the limitations of a Zach Taylor. You don't really have room for error for T. Higgins to be out. And you're kind of banking on some of them guys on the Saints wanting to be gone because you know that your offensive coordinator or your coach hasn't been savvy enough to work through it and take advantage of when these other teams have been missing people.
For sure. So let's get into the game plan. Offensively, I'll start it off here. I think offensively, we saw and we kind of talked in Twitter Spaces. You brought up the importance, and Joe Goodberry brought up the importance of RPOs, right? That's something that allowed them to get in the groove. I think you said Joe Burrow even shared that as well. RPOs for sure, but obviously that's really tied to the run game, right? And I think, like we said, if you want teams to get out of this cover 2 shell and these looks, you got to be able to run the ball. We saw them do that last week. I don't feel like 14 carries is enough. As I said on Twitter Spaces, you got to get Joe Mixon, I think, at least 20 carries in this game just to establish the run, just to open things up offensively. And we've seen a lot of running attacks around the league where the run game is supposed to open the pass. You talk about the 49ers, that Shanahan system, right? That is how you are able to pass the ball is based off of the run. The Bengals can do the same thing. Obviously, there's going to be holes in this coverage. It's going to vary, right? Because they might run quarters, they might do the cover 4, they might do cover 6, right? So they may be in different areas, but I think when they are in cover 2, you got to attack those spots that are open outside of just the check downs, right? And if it is something like a check down, it's got to be a situation where you try to get the ball into the running back's hands immediately. I think anything that causes a running back to jump up and get the ball and then get to it, you can't do that. You got to get there a little bit faster so that person can catch it in stride and just cut up and get as many yards if you are taking the check downs. But there's the sideline shots. There's other things. A lot of people are putting plays out there to try to help the Bengals offense, right? They just got to be more creative, man. They just got to be more creative. Use those opportunities and those plays at certain times in the game. Situational football. Play better situational football. It's not that the plays are all bad and all of that, right? It's just when they use those plays and when they execute them, depending on the situation, is I think what they need to really look at and examine. Get out to a fast start. The one thing about the Saints at home, and that's when I talk about the splits, a lot of the stats that you see me throw out, they are based on whether you play at home or away for both teams. The Saints at home, believe it or not, you talk about how slow the Bengals are with the first half, right? The Saints are even slower. They're like 22nd at home when it comes to scoring. They're not even averaging the same amount of points per half as the Bengals. That is something that the Bengals have to capitalize on because you know what? In the second half, they are the 4th highest scoring team in the NFL by second half measures. So they're a second half team. So if you take advantage of them offensively, in the first half, you got to put up those points. Obviously, protect Joe Burrow. That's always a major key. Establish the run, and I think that would be my recipe for offense. Zim, what's yours?
And we're solely talking about the Bengals offense, right?
Yeah. It's the game plan for the Bengals offense. Then we'll go to the defense. I did kind of hop around a little bit on that one.
A little bit. Yeah. But no, I was just making sure I didn't want to like talk out of turn or whatever.
No, you good.
Yeah, for the Bengals offense, I think it's very clear. You talked about the RPO. Is one thing I've been really harping on. I feel like the breakthrough in this past week was there have been guys like Goodberry online, guys like myself, a lot of people that I've seen. We pointing out one thing that I was looking at an injury report that just popped on my screen. It was talking about what's his name? Jonah Williams and T. Higgins. I thought it was ruling them out, but it was just an update. I'm sorry. So we've been talking about the advancements of how you develop a game plan and how you move forward to win a game in the National Football League. Ultimately, you got to figure out a way to get your guys into rhythm and make sure that they feel good about it. If you guys don't know, Joe Burrow does a weekly podcast with Colin Cowherd on a weekly basis. I find it very therapeutic. I think you guys should check it out. Joe talks about being literally like you're down 10 points. Now he can't, and how hard it is to go win those games. Now you can't buy into every single element that he says, but the one takeaway that I do take from it, and he didn't say this, is that if you do go down 10 points or 14 3 points or something like that, anything like that, your offensive line isn't elite enough to let other teams know that you're passing the ball. Like say that when the Chiefs were down, 21-17 points or something the other night, you're talking about a top 3, top 5 offensive line with a quarterback that could throw the football all over the place. That's not a crazy concept for them to come back. For the Bengals, it's such a more steeper hill to climb. So he was just saying, like, you got to jump out on teams and stuff. And one thing that I think he was disappointed in is the fact that in all of these games, it takes them so many possessions to evaluate how teams are playing them. And before you know it, you've wasted 3-4 possessions. Yes, your defense is playing really good football, but you wasted all these possessions. And now you get into your rhythm. And he said, I started to feel in the zone in the second quarter. And then he throws the pick, like not too far out there. And he was very disappointed in that. But when he gets into the zone, it shouldn't take him a whole quarter and a half to get into a zone. So one thing that I noticed that was really, really telling on the film, I chopped up every single play on this. I put probably about 20, 30 tweets on my timeline on Twitter. But every element of the game, I slowed down a lot of plays, a lot of different things. And a lot of things that we've been looking for and clamoring from are coming out of RPO action, where you're having the run and the pass option, and you're making it like a lot of teams prior was standing too high because Joe Mixon wasn't running the ball good. But then what happens when Joe Mixon runs the ball for 5, 6, 8, 10, 12-yard carries? Soon as the ball is now slapped, they're showing a too high look because they know that the Bengals aren't beating it quick enough and they aren't winning fast enough. But as soon as the ball is snapping, you're seeing an occurrence, and I saw this last week too, where you had a safety just jet down into the box because defensive coordinators don't want to stay in too high shells. Like they don't. Like they're doing that to show us that, but they don't want to stay in that because it leaves you so much susceptible to the run. And that's exactly what the Bengals did. They made them pay for it. And they marched all the way. Like these are 2 8-minute drives that the Bengals had. So eventually they're like, man, we can't just stay in this too high. And the Bengals started doing RPOs. And as soon as the ball goes into the gut of the running back, the tape opens wide up. Now Jamar Chase.
Do you think if you have like one run against that, and let's just say it's like a 30-yard run, do you think that immediately pulls them out of it, or do you think that they keep
depending on how aggressive the coordinator is and how far out of what the team is scheming up and what they really want to do? Like the Dolphins never wanted to play too high. That's why if you listen to Joe Burrow's podcast that he had with Colin Cowherd, he talked about how they just got impatient because we were just hitting them underneath the whole time. And then they go into their single high looks because they want Holland going around and roaming and hitting and doing all these different things. Just like Tyrann Mathieu. What do y'all think you think they want the Honey Badger not to get close up to the line of scrimmage? They want Honey Badger doing what he does best, and that's roaming around in that box. They might show us so there's different variations of cover 2. You could show a 2-man look that the safeties are slightly a little bit higher, but still pre-snap, you don't know if the safety is going to back up to your horses on the outside or if they're going to come down into the box or whatever. But when a guy starts to show you these single high looks because they're getting impatient, it all came out of the RPOs and the ability of Joe Mixon to be able to run the ball really well. Once he put the ball into the gut of Joe Mixon, then all of a sudden I had a one-on-one with T. Higgins, and that's the killer with T. Higgins not being there. He would have feasted on it. And a lot of the different shots, even take a look at the Mike Thomas deep throw that he doesn't come down with. Come on, we know that T. Higgins catches that all day. How do we know? Because we've seen it for the last 2 years. 1,100-yard campaign, 900-yard campaign. Like it's easy money. So if he plays, I think they capitalize on it. But the Saints don't want to play too high looks. They just want to show it to you. But the RPO takes all of that away. And I'm not saying that you change your whole entire offense to that. But if you want to get into a rhythm early on and you want to get out of the whole concept of how we got to figure out what this team is doing, you'll find out in an RPO action, whether it's out of a shotgun or under center. You're going to find that out early. Come out the first drive. The first drive of the game, don't come out in a 5-wide set and signal to everybody I'm about to throw the football just because I feel like I throw the football better than your corners or whatever. That's arrogance, that's stupid, and it shows your hand. Come out in different sets of shotgun RPOs just like you did the week before. And if that safety comes down in the box, then we're pulling the ball back out. Mix is not getting the ball, and I'm going right back into my one-on-one matchups. A lot of those times they had a signal for Jamar Chase to just run what I call like a smoke route, and he'll actually back up another yard. So if the corner does come up, you're taking away the whole option of a pick six. But Joe Burrow has an option to throw it to Chase. Maybe he gets 3 yards. Maybe he does what he did to Christian Fulton in the Titans game, and he goes 60, 70 yards. Or he can hand it right off the Mixon, and I keep on going to work 7, 8 yards. When y'all start to come up in the box, now I got you where I want you. Now I go into my stuff. Now I run whatever I want to run. But I think early in the games, it's very important that they get into these RPOs so that they can figure out what do the defense really want to do. And maybe you don't have a successful first drive, but you'll get enough information to guide you through the first half of the football.
For sure. Another thing that I would like to see, I put it on Twitter at New Stripe City. Check the Twitter out, and also check out at Zemhude on Twitter and the Wincinnati Pod on Twitter. I talked about the Star Wars formation because like we saw last game, right? They did a lot of screens. I would love to see them put like a tackle out there. And the whole concept, right, is you try to see where you have a discrepancy of defenders. So if you have the tackle out there, the tight end, and another two receivers or someone out there, it lets you see if you had a numbers. And obviously, if you get a left tackle out there blocking one of those corners, if they want to play that, I feel like they could have some success there. We'll see how they're creative. But defensively, if I'm giving the game plan on defense, is one thing. This stuck out to me, especially when I looked at the splits for the Saints. They are the worst team in the NFL in turnover differential. -8. If you don't know what turnover differential is, it's based off of how many turnovers or giveaways that your team has minus the number that you take away from the other team. They have a -8. That means offensively, they turn the ball over in bunches. And if you don't believe it, they only have one interception this season. And I don't want to jinx anything, so I'm knocking on the wood. But they, as a team, through all of these games, only have created one interception. I think they've actually forced more fumbles than any other turnovers that they have. But that is key because offensively, if you're facing Andy Dalton or you're facing Jameis Winston, they are guys that can really turn the ball over, right? So I think obviously turnovers are a big thing. Another thing that they're really bad in this league from an offensive standpoint or just from a team standpoint is penalties. The Saints are the 30th ranked team in the NFL in terms of penalties at home when they play at home, which is crazy, right? Because you're supposed to really get home cooking when you're at home, but apparently they have been having a lot of mistakes happen. But teams that make mistakes don't really win too often. The Bengals definitely have an advantage there. One of the things that I would be worried about, or initially I was worried about until I looked at the actual numbers, you would think Chris Olave, all of these guys that they have, that they would be a passing team, right? They're not really a good passing team. You know what they are good at? Running the ball. 8th in the league right now. As I was telling Zim, I don't know if that's Kamara because he's been banged up. It's definitely not Mark Ingram because I have both of those dudes on my fantasy team. But the X factor is definitely the guy that they use as a gadget player. His name escapes me right now. He just had a crazy game. What's his name, Zim? The dude that's like a tight end, a running back, a quarterback. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is definitely a guy that you have to control. I think that's a guy that you have to look for on defense, forcing the turnovers. And of course, I think another factor, which we kind of talk about offense and defense, look at how special teams wrecked it. I would say special teams has to put the defense and offense in better positions. So to me, the key is turnovers. Then what are your thoughts on the defensive game plan?
I think stopping the run is always going to be the number one thing. Isn't it encouraging too? I don't know if y'all heard about this. DJ Reader's on the rehab field as well.
Field. Yes, sir.
Just so everybody's privy to that. It's like he might not be as far away as people think. And that's, you come down this stretch, there's some teams that I know run the ball really well, like the Falcons and stuff. I don't think he'll be ready that early. The Browns. That's the game that I want him back for. All right, back on subject. All right, so defensive-wise, one of the things I just think that's why the Bengals defense and this team is so special. And I think that's why so many fans are just so disappointed at how they've started out, is because they have the pieces and the personnel to match up with anything. And who knows if you'll have this opportunity again. The linebacker play that you saw, like what they did to Lamar Jackson last week, not a lot of teams can do that. A lot of teams don't match up well with Taysom Hill because they're like, well, here's this guy that's way bigger and he's faster than a lot of our linebackers, but he's not faster than a lot of our linebackers. So I think just like, like the Akeem Davis Gaithers of the world, this is going to be a huge game for him. Like these are going to be there's going to be a huge game for Pratt. I think Pratt and ADG are my guys that like really like keep them in the order. And this is the number one killer with them. Now that Kamara is back for real, because remember he had been hurt. Now that he's back, Drew Brees, I watched Drew Brees make a living off of this, where he just throws it to Kamara in the flat, or they have these screen plays that they actually do design for him, and he's the best. There's not another screen running back in the NFL better than Kamara. He has this change of pace, and I fell in love with his game. I've always told y'all that this is my favorite running back. He has this change of pace.
Not on Sunday.
No, on Sunday he's a bum. But like he has this change of pace where he'll fool you into thinking like, oh, okay, I got him, and then he'll just like change up the speed so quick. And if you don't aggressively go after him in the flats, he'll kill you. I watched Drew Brees do a game one time. I think Kamara probably had like 160 yards like receiving or something. Just throwing it to like acting like he wants to throw it down the field to Mike Thomas or something like that, and just the Kamara, and they had no linebackers. It was a cheat code. They couldn't stop him, and I'll never forget like any of those games. Like if there was a Saints fan in here, they'll tell you like they'll go to work with Kamara. If you could stop the run, stop hitting the flats, I'm not as worried. Olave is in concussion protocol. He was limited today. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but he was limited. I know Mike Thomas still has the foot issue, so they might want to like let him rest a little bit, or I hope they let him rest a little bit, get his foot like better like another week. But there's some guys, and the other wide receiver Hardy, who is like he has a role with them as well too. He didn't practice as well today, but I just think that
Hill is the leading rusher of the Saints so far.
Because the way that they do it, it just doesn't look normal too. Because a lot of times he's coming out of these formations, and you don't know if he's going to be a part of like receiving or whatever, and they'll do like a quick handoff,
or he might throw it. You don't know.
You don't know. And so those are the things that they got to really watch for. And it's almost like you got to spy on him, and then you got to have those same spies. You got to have Logan Wilson and company and Pratt. I think the linebackers are going to be very, very important for this game. But you got to make sure that they get out to those flats, man. I'm telling you.
We talked about T. Higgins earlier, and speaking of T. Higgins, he just took a visit to our friends at Pierce Dental. Saw some dope artwork from our man Sean. But talk to the people and the folks in Cincinnati about our friends at Pierce Dental.
At Pierce Dental Group, your smile and your confidence, it starts with your smile. And I want to make sure everybody understands that this is the best in the business. He just posted a good picture with our friend of the show, Chris Evans, too. And so all the Bengals players have been checking this guy out, been doing a lot of good work over there. So I think it's really, really important that we take, our personal health, our physical health, all these different things very seriously. So get a free consultation at piercedentalgroup.com. You can also go, if you are in the Cincinnati area, you can go downtown to Fountain Square and go and check them out too. All amazing office. Go check them out and get a free consultation that way too. But on Twitter, Instagram, you can go check them out at piercedentalgroup.com. amazing service, amazing people, and we highly suggest that you go and get a free consultation.
Yep, cleanings, veneers, they do it all there. And, you know, the teeth health is definitely important because that is definitely related to your overall health. It goes all the way through. But speaking of certain bets, we like to do prop bets and stuff like that. I don't know what we're hitting on. Let us know. Is somebody out there tracking whether we hitting on these or not? Because I don't think did we hit on the Lamar one? I feel like did he hit the yard?
I said over, and he definitely didn't get over.
I don't think
he ended because going into that last drive, he only had like 30-something yards. I think he ended with like 58 or something like that.
Yeah, I think he was actually under. So we gotta go back to the drawing board.
I think I hit on the under on the score though. I told you it was going to be low on the score.
Yeah, for sure.
I hit on the under on that. What was the other one though?
I don't recall it right now.
Anybody in the crowd that could tell us what was the other one? Because I feel like we're doing pretty good work here.
This week it looks like we got all Bengals ones, so no one's about the Saints, so you won't have to worry about Alvin Kamara and what prop bet we're gonna have for the over and under for him.
I know T Higgins, my fantasy team. I lost a game by 1 point, all because T Higgins didn't even play. Carlson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire played in the last game and took them over the top. I woke up and I lost by 1 point on the strength of I played T Higgins in the game, thinking that he was going to play.
I don't know if that's bad or if, speaking of thinking that he's going to play, Darren Waller this week, boy, yeah, that's what I had to deal with. The over and under, and I think we took the over on this, was Hayden Hurst, 25.5 yards last week, and I think we both made that one, right?
Yeah, come on, that's easy work. Hurst is a dog right now, right?
By the way, I'm not telling you where to bet because we do not have an official bet sponsor. If you're listening and you are one, definitely get in contact with myself or Zim. Because
if you're a sponsor of anything, especially local business, if you have anything that you want us to talk about, I know you guys watch our commercials, see how we talk about these companies that we really, really like. Please send those offers in. You know how to reach me. Hit up my email, hit up Ace, DM us or whatever. You got something that you want to present to the people, 100% we'll check it out.
Yep. And if you aren't familiar with our Twitters, his is at Zimhude, all one word. Mine is New Stripe City, all one word as well. Hit us up. We love to support local businesses in Cincinnati. We could give our business to other places, but we really want to bring it to Cincinnati because you guys are the ones that deserve it. We love helping out small businesses. But back to the over-unders. Joe Burrow, over or under 2.5 passing touchdowns.
God, don't hate me for this. I'm gonna take the under.
I'm with you, bro. I'm taking the under on this.
That doesn't mean that we lose.
I think he can get 2. I think Joe Mixon can get some rushing touchdowns. I think 3 for me is just a bit much because I just have to be real. The Saints really have a good defense, 13th overall at home, even though Geno Smith did light them up. But I think if you're going
don't you hate it when you see a team light up like how the Dolphins lit up the Ravens and then you go and play them? You're like, why we ain't do that?
Why we didn't do that? See, it's a game-to-game situation. It all depends. Sometimes there's outliers. Sometimes people get exposed. So the next one, Jamar Chase, Uno, over or under 95 receiving yards.
I'm gonna go over on this one. That is a stupid bet. If you're betting that, don't do it. Just walk away from that bet. Like find something else. But I'm gonna take the over just because I feel like whether Lattimore plays or not, you got to tip your hat to the Ravens. I thought they had a really good game plan for Chase or whatever. And it's only but so much. The law of averages, you can't really bottle them up like that. And especially if T. Higgins doesn't play. I think maybe Tyler Boyd gets more involved, but you're going to see if you give Chase 10, 12 targets like they just did this past week, more times than not, he's going to give you 100 yards, like period. And I think like, especially if T doesn't play, you're going to see him go like 110, 120 easy. I think one of those big Chase games is coming up like pretty soon where everybody says, okay, he's back where he never left, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's hard, right? Because every team, when it comes to their injury report, is different. it could be, oh, they held him out 2 straight days because he's not likely to play. Like that's how it is for us, right? But some of these other teams, they might activate a dude on like Saturday. Like you look at Marcus Peters last week, it was looking like he wasn't going to play. Then the next thing you know, you look up, he's out there. I think in this one, if Marcus Lattimore is out there, I'm taking the under, bro. I'm taking the under. Really? I think he's a good.
I think he would cook Lattimore though. I think that's
he could cook. I'm not gonna say that.
I think that's a cornerback that he would like to play. I think that's the type of cornerback that he kills, bro. I really do. I don't care.
For me, I'm not saying that he's gonna shut him down. I just think teams are gonna bracket him. I think that they're gonna put a good corner on him and a safety over the top. They're gonna shade coverage that way. So if it were a more inexperienced corner, I think he could, beat a lot of that.
But you know what they do that sometimes that I hate that they do. And remember they did this in that Bears game last year. It's like when we see an opposite, we like, oh, this is food. We're gonna kill this dude. You ever notice how they never really attack it like they supposed to? That always bothers me. Like I remember, I think it was like the Chargers game last year. It was a couple games where me and you sat on here and said, man, we about to eat. And then were the games that he didn't. Then we talked about the Ravens game the first time, and you like, oh yeah. I mean, not you specifically, but at the time, it was like, all right, well, he's going up against Marlon Humphrey, and then he goes for 210 or something like that. So it's kind of weird with that, but I think it's more.
He does have like a bunch of family members and stuff at the game, and he is in the know, and I mean that's where he's from.
It's not a good bet.
You know what? X that, bro. Give me the over. Give me the over. I'm taking the over. There ain't no way that Uno is going back home and not hitting the gritty on them boys at some point in that game.
When you bet anything in life, one of my number one rules is never bet more than what you can afford or whatever, like, and you'll be fine, right? That's my number one rule. The number two rule that I always use on any bet is how complex or how hard or how tough is the feat that you're actually saying? How tough is that for a guy to accomplish? 95 yards for anybody else is a tough feat. That's why I said I wouldn't bet it like money-wise, but on some fan, here we are, we need this game, and we believe in Uno 100%. I feel like this is a game where he could go over 100, knowing what we know about the situation.
So speaking about going over or under, the Bengals scored 30 points.
You go first.
I'm taking the under on this, bro. I think like if the key is running, right? Running. Now, I'm not going to say running doesn't automatically equal points because I have seen some running teams, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, score a lot of points with running the ball a lot, right? But I just think this game on the road, I want it to be 30. I want it to be over 30. But I'm going to say the under. I think that they could probably get to like 28 in this game. At best, if they're really taking advantage of this defense. However, we kind of talked about it. The defense, they just came out today on Next Gen Stats. I don't know if they're looking at home specifically, but overall, they've been susceptible to the deep ball.
Real quick. Speaking of Next Gen Stats, make sure y'all follow Wincinnati Pod. Wincinnati Pod this week had a tweet that is now almost viral online,
like 4,000 likes.
And it's got, I just was looking at it, 1 million impressions. So we appreciate everybody for following Wincinnati Pod, the show that we're on. And a lot of people are copying the post and posing it as their own. So make sure that you all are following and commenting and doing the Wincinnati Pod stuff. Speaking of Next Gen Stats, but my bad, bro. Go ahead.
No, you good. So, I'm gonna take the under on that one. What are you thinking as far as the over and under on the points?
I'm gonna take if T. Higgins plays, I would take the over. And I know that I can't do that right now because we're going to put it on the spot. But I'm thinking that he probably doesn't play, and if he does, he might be like limited or on a snap count. I'm gonna say under. If he did play 100%, I would say over. I think that they feel really good about a lot of stuff that they were able to accomplish last week, and I think they're going to build off of it. I think that they do score 24 to 27 points in that range if he doesn't. And I think that's probably good enough to win the game.
And I'll say this too. I know I had comments about Zach Taylor should give up the play calling. I would be more than happy for him to prove me wrong and for them to drop 30 plus. I don't want them to be under 30 plus. I would love for them to drop 30. Let's see if they can do it. But let's talk about another one of our sponsors of the show, Fan Cave Pro, where you can make your fan cave come to life. Me recently, myself, just moved into this new crib. I'm in the man cave right now. As you can see, very bare, nothing on the walls. I'm sitting over here in the corner. I don't really have a plan for my furniture. I don't really have a plan for this room. That's why I'm going to call my friends at Fan Cave Pro to bring this room together, and you guys will be able to see it evolve over time. But if you need that help, you need that insight, you need the people to give you those ideas, Fan Cave Pro can do that with you. You can meet with them for a 30-minute consultation, talk to them about what your interests are. Then they'll let you know what you can do to bring your fan cave to life. So check out Fan Cave Pro. Also, if you aren't aware, it is our producer of the show's actual company. So I appreciate him and appreciate how they're going to help bring my fan cave to life. And of course, once I get the fan cave ready, it's going to be a lot of TV watching in here. It's going to be a lot of Bengals games in here. I just picked up the Uno chips today, but it wouldn't be complete without those Uno wings from Midwest Best Barbecue.
Simply got you with them Uno wings. Uno wings. They tell me that them Uno wings will make you do the pretty. Them Uno wings will make you do the pretty. Uno wings. Uno wings. Come and get them Uno wings. Uno wings. Who they gonna be? Them Uno wings. Uno wings. Simply got you with them Uno wings. Uno wings. They tell me that them Uno wings will make you do the pretty. Them Uno wings will make you do the pretty.
Shout out to our friends over there at Midwest Best Barbecue, 669 Justice Court in Loveland, Ohio. Go ahead and get you some Uno wings. If you are a ribs lover, they do have the ribs back on selective dates. Make sure you follow them on Twitter at Midwest Best Barbecue. Check them out. Tell them Ace and Zim sent you. Let's talk about this next one, man. Why has Andy Dalton, the Dalton lovers I thought they were in the casket, bro. I seen some of them. I don't know if these are Dalton lover zombies. It's a lot of Andy Dalton talk that I'm hearing from some ex-Dalton lovers or undercover Dalton lovers that are back. Why has Andy Dalton performed so well against the Bengals, bro? I just don't get it. Why can't he perform like he did when he was in stripes against us?
I don't know, bro. I think it might have something to do with the curse that I put on him, the 4th and 3 forever. One of the stipulations of the curse is that it doesn't have any weight that it does against when he plays the actual Bengals. The curse itself that I put on him is only giving him, it just allows him to never have a starting position. And it also just says it'll never win a Super Bowl. But like, I never thought about like the whole thing. I would have cursed him against the Bengals too, but I wasn't thinking that far ahead when he threw the ball away on 4th down. So here we are, going to see him again. I think this is the first time where I'm just like, I would have rather played Jameis, believe it or not. I don't know how you felt about that. Mm-hmm. I just feel like Jameis would have gave up that ball. I think that Dalton, I wish it was a primetime game because I would say we're going to destroy this dude. But let's just see how it goes.
Wish it was on Thursday night too, right? Huh? Yeah. Bring back some flashbacks.
Bro. Dalton lovers, I don't know. I don't even have a.
That's the funniest thing because they're like, oh, the Bengals haven't won in 10 years on Sunday Night Football.
I'm like, because of one
who's most responsible for that?
Bro. I had a full circle moment earlier today, and I was telling somebody about when this was a thing. This was the first Civil War. Remember, it was really Chase Young or Burrow.
Yeah,
it was really Chase Young or Burrow, and the Dalton lovers tried to tell us anything they could to try to preserve Dalton. And you got to think too, a lot of Dalton lovers were kind of like Homer, like Ohio State. I'm sorry if you're an Ohio State fan, but like kind of like in that realm, and they still exist today. And somebody messaged me the other day, and I just muted the person or whatever forever.
I had to, bro. I'm like,
I had to mute. Somebody said Burrow is a lot like Dalton, but something. And I'm like,
God, they're not.
And
on
he
the
was
same,
like,
in
man,
the same universe, bro. They're not on the same planet.
And he was like,
at the same places. It's not the same.
Bro, and they were like, and they said this, and somebody else said this, like, man, it's not a big drop off from Dalton. I was like, shit, me.
Mm-hmm. The only thing they have in common is that they both threw 4 interceptions in the game. That is the only thing that they might have in common whatsoever.
Bro, the chase, and the full circle moment was this. I had a Commander fan tell me, he was like, man, he said, Zim, I remember the draft, and I remember you on Instagram. And how bad you didn't want Chase. Because you remember, if the Commanders at the time, the Washington football team, I don't know if they were still the Redskins then, I don't know. But they were like, if they would have beat, had they not beat the Dolphins, they would have had they could have had a chance at the number 1 pick.
To be the number 1 pick, yeah.
And also, they could have drafted Justin Herbert. I told him, and I told all of them then, I said, yeah, I get it. Wentz is cool in the offseason or whatever. Because remember, at one point, they were probably going to get Matt Ryan. I said, as long as you got a guy like that you cannot depend on, that you can't build with or whatever, the first step of every organization is an elite quarterback if you want to win in today's game. Having a top 5 defense isn't practical and it's not sustainable. Even the Bills being the number 1, I think, pass defense right now, do you consider them like an elite defense at this point? Like I love their pass.
I have to, bro. I might. The only reason I say that is because I was looking at the splits, right? And I'm looking at it for scoring. Do you know that they're averaging like only giving up 5 points per game at home? That is crazy. They've only played 2 games in their defense, but they have completely and utterly.
As far as yards per game, I think it's like 100 something or something crazy or something wild.
Crazy,
but this is the thing. To sustain that for a whole season and stuff is not as practical as a quarterback being able to eliminate a lot of your flaws on a weekly basis. And I just thought it was so crazy. I had a Commander fan tell me, like, man, I remember you in that draft.
He probably really would have wanted them to get Burrow instead, right?
He was saying at the time I didn't want Burrow, but he was like, I entertained the idea of Herbert. And he was like, but at the
Carson
time
Wentz is your quarterback now. He probably is like,
yeah. I mean, he's done. The dude, and another guy he's like a troll on there, whatever. You know who I'm talking about, but he's changed his logo to a half Chargers, half Commanders, because he's like, I'm done with the team until they get a quarterback. I can't win in the league, and I just thought that was wild. And like going back in time, like look at the Lions last week.
What happened with that Lions? I thought the Lions got it right.
But you know what's so crazy about the internet and why I got crazy people on, like my following, I think kind of grew on Twitter is because I started actually going back and holding people accountable for some of these takes all through week 1 through 4. It was like, oh yeah, see what happens when you get Panay Sewell. And then week 5, it's like crickets because they just totally disregard. Like you need to have tremendous quarterback play every single week for everything to work. You can't just, it's not sustainable. The only thing that's sustainable in the National Football League, it ain't running backs on a year-to-year basis because you see how that's going currently right now. It ain't wide receivers going for 2,000 yards every year. It's not that. The only sustainable thing in the NFL, the thing that rings true every single year with Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen's of the world, Lamar Jackson's, and Joe Burrow's of the world is a top-tier quarterback. That is the one thing that is sustainable and that can keep you in every single game, and you always have a fighter's chance.
Yeah, I noticed that my weekly tweets from Craig just started disappearing, bro. I was wondering what happened. I mean, I was.
Where you at, Craig?
Where Craig at? Where you at?
We're looking for you, Craig. Where you at, Craig?
Looking for you. But yeah, man, they gotta really do their thing against Andy Dalton now. And I think you always got to give context. I'm not trying to make excuses, right? But I think the reason why Andy Dalton has been successful, first of all, Andy Dalton exited the last game that they played. He didn't finish the game. He played in the first half. In his defense, he looked like he was doing okay, but he wasn't the guy that won them the game, right? Justin Fields won them the game.
Who did they play in both of those games too, though?
Yeah.
So everybody talks about like Dalton being really, really good in those games against the Bengals.
But the Dallas game, he was playing like a.
He played backups and all of. He hasn't played like a elite, like a top.
He hasn't gotten a full power Joe Burrow football led game, and so I think this will be the first real game. And I mean, Dalton's not bad. We're not saying the dude is trash or anything. If honestly, I would say that he's mid. And I know a lot of people are like, they hate the word mid. Mid just means average. So if you don't understand that lingo, that's what it means. You're just average. And I think that's what Andy Dalton has been.
He has the ability. Cooper Rush is mid, right? But Cooper Rush has the ability to throw an excellent pass. Just because somebody is mid doesn't mean they don't have the ability to have a good game. So Dalton he throws a good ball. He's accurate when he gets into his bag or whatever, and he's straight. But the mental part of Dalton, the prime time, the things that he couldn't get out of his head, just means, like me personally, a lot of misfortunes of the Bengals.
Bro. There's some seeds in there.
Listen, a lot of Bengals fans hear a lot of crap that you hear from people telling you about the Bengals for the last 10 years. In my mind, because I look at those playoff performances, 6 interceptions, 1 touchdown, a lot of what they define you as, a lot of what they talk trash to you about is from Andy Dalton. And the people that still be like, well, I mean, Dalton is still like, I just can't get with it, bro. Like, I think Joe Burrow is showing you the way, and that's what it looks like. There's no world. Even Baker Mayfield went to the playoffs and put up some decent numbers, and he showed you what just an average quarterback play looks like in the playoffs, and he won a game. You could have had that had Dalton just played an average game in 3 out of those 4 games. He couldn't even do that. And that's when it matters the most. When people tell me about Joe Burrow not being Patrick Mahomes, I'm like, yeah, he's not Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is a great thrower or whatever, the football and stuff like that. But
speaking of mid,
but Burrow came through when it was time, and that's how we define quarterbacks, and that's how you define success from an organization when your quarterback comes through and plays lights out at those moments.
Speaking of mid, man, we got a mid off happening tonight on Thursday Night Football, man. That is a mid off. If you don't understand what mid is, just turn on Thursday Night Football tonight. That is the definition. It might be.
I just changed my lineup at the beginning of this.
It might actually be a Reggie off. If you don't know what Reggie is, it's a grade below mid. But speaking of things that will not be mid and things that will be loud, from both standpoints, fans of Cincy. This weekend, we will be there in New Orleans. We will be holding it down. Definitely be sure to come through, pull up on us. Even if you're just going and you didn't book your flight and all of that with them, they still are selling VIP tickets right now to the tailgate. So be sure to check those out. You can get those at fansofcincy.com. Me and them going to be in the house. We'll be there. They're going to have a lot of dope food, New Orleans-style Cajun food there. You're going to get drinks, all kind of stuff. So definitely pull up on us in New Orleans. Hopefully we'll be partying on Bourbon Street that weekend because the Bengals have went out and got a dub. But thank you guys for listening to the Wincinnati podcast.
Yes, Sirski.
Yes, Sirski.
Hello, world. We got a special show as always. TJ Wincinnati, Jimmy Chase, Coach Jimmy Burrow.
Time to be a Bengals
How do
fan.
you balance being a professional athlete and family obligation? These are top 5 Bengals of all time.
All time? Yeah. Shock the world.